the haven of my garden was so different from the rest of my life. It was a respite. It was a reward and a blessing. And the space felt sacred. Although at that time, I never thought about God being there.
Welcome to Matters of Soul Importance, where we dive deeply into topics of both earthly and eternal consequence. I'm Roxanne Solonin, faith columnist and features writer for the Forum, author, and speaker. My guest today, Cecile Smith, calls herself a lover of nature, casual gardener, author, singer, movement specialist, former homeschool mother, and friend who loves spending time outdoors. Her favorite place to contemplate, sip coffee, walk, and talk with God. I was drawn to Cecile's work in a special way this year after my garden was inadvertently destroyed by some workers repaving our driveway. Though I know it wasn't intentional, I was devastated to realize that the perennial garden, which a kind friend had planted about a decade ago, was no more. It felt like part of my soul had been ripped apart. And yes, I shed a few tears over the ordeal. But when I shared about this on social media, I received some very encouraging messages from gardening friends who encouraged me to not despair, but see this moment as a chance to resurrect what had been damaged. Fittingly, the garden mishap had happened around Easter, so I ended my pity party and began researching Mary gardens, something I'd had, sort of, but had not plotted myself. Armed now with information from several articles and a list of possible perennials and a few herbs, I set about restarting my garden. In this mishap, I was reminded of how God can make all things new and that the garden truly is a symbol for the spiritual life in so many ways. Cecile, who joins us from Central Ohio, seems to agree. Her garden is among her favorite places to write and pray while immersed in nature, where she says, I am always in pursuit of God's presence here on earth. Her first published book, Connecting with God in the Garden, an inspirational journal for all seasons, released on April 21st, 2022, and will be a featured component of our discussion. Now, let's jump into the soil and see what we can learn together about how God reaches us through the places right in our midst. Welcome, Cecile, to Matters of Soul Importance. How are you doing this morning?
I am very well this morning. I hope you are too. And I am so excited to be here with you.
So, question, have you been in your garden today yet?
Well, yes, absolutely, always.
Oh, that's awesome. You know, recently I had been seeing people have these bird cameras, little feeders, and where you can kind of watch birds from your phone. And my sister finally got one, and I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm so jealous right now. So I wanted one for my birthday, which is in September. I was going to ask my family if I could get one, and instead I decided to gift myself an early birthday present because I didn't want to wait till September because there's birds everywhere. And I had seen a blue jay in my yard, which we don't get a lot of like colorful birds. We just mainly it's like the black birds and the robins. And so seeing a blue jay, there is one, I think it has a nest somewhere around here. So anyway, I got a bird cam. So now and I should say too, the first time I saw this blue jay, which kind of inspired me to get the bird cam, I was in my garden. So there you go. So we're going to talk this morning. We're going to ask the question, which I can't wait because I just think it's going to be a beautiful answer, but can gardening bring God closer? And so you have been pondering this for a while, but before we go into that, the theme, I want to hear just, Cecile, about you and maybe your earlier life and a little bit about your faith too. So why don't you just share the highlights of your journey?
Okay. Well, I grew up in a very devout and large Catholic family at a time when outdoor neighborhood play was alive and well.
Yes.
There were no devices. We attended Catholic schools and participated in all the devotions as a family. And I was a missionary.
Really?
Yes, at a well, here's the story.
Mhm.
At a young age, I gathered all my younger siblings and played mass. Necco candies. Are you familiar with Neccos?
No.
Oh my goodness, they are an old-fashioned candy. Anyway, they're round and solid, so you can just put them on your tongue like a Eucharist host.
I think I might know what you're talking about.
Yes.
I'm imagining something that looks like that, but I just didn't know what it was called. So, yeah.
And okay, and so we would get the candies, and I taught them transubstantiation, which is a lost word these days.
Wow, you were deep.
Well, I was a missionary. I'm telling you what.
Let me ask you before you go on further. So were you the oldest of the kids?
No,
Okay.
I was one of the older ones, but there were
Okay.
several younger below me, so I had plenty of captive candy lovers.
Cute.
And anyway, then we would make, so that's that story. And then at 9 years old, I made a wager with my friends on the playground. Can you imagine making wagers at 9 years old? Anyway, that I would be a missionary sister.
Boy.
And they said, no, you won't. I said, yes, I will. And so we bet $1 million.
Oh, wow.
That's hilarious.
Heavy duty exchanges there. Yeah. What, was there someone that inspired you? Like, was there a saint or someone that put that idea in your head?
I don't remember a particular saint, but I was in Catholic school and we did have sisters, nuns, habited nuns. So I don't know if that was, I can't remember any specific ones that I liked. And of course, they weren't missionaries. They were in the classroom. But for some reason, it must have been, the faith stories that we talked about in school that, inspired me to want to be a missionary and go share the faith. But, that was short-lived. And then when I was a little bit older, old enough for slumber parties, I would lead the night prayers.
You really wanted to be a leader. That's awesome. Yeah.
And, that's not a regular thing at slumber parties, but I would just kneel on my sleeping bag and most of the others would join me. So just to show that I was entrenched in the Catholic life and practices. So that's my childhood story.
So I always like to know the order. So you were one of the older ones. How many were there? And then maybe you said that already. Where were you? 10. Okay.
Yes.
And you were number
3.
3. Okay. All right. That's good. Yeah. I grew up I just had one sister. So but my dad came from 9 kids and I always just was fascinated with that. So I think that's one of the reasons I ended up with 5 kids, but
yes. Well, that's an interesting number because I have 5 kids as well.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we have a lot in common as I was reading your bio. I love sipping coffee. I'm actually still sipping my coffee. It's starting to get lukewarm, and I love being outside, but I didn't grow up with gardening parents. So I'm curious about how your interest in gardening came up. And you can share more about your life too. I mean, you didn't become a missionary. What did you become?
Well, then I just went on through school and, then you get married, have kids, and you start your own garden, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, there wasn't anything too interesting in between then, but I went all through. Well, there might have been some interesting things that we don't want to talk about, but
we all had our times of growing, right?
Oh, yes, transition. But no, I would be happy to jump into if we had a garden growing up, and my parents always had a garden, not flowers but food. Tomatoes, always tomatoes, lettuce, and a few other things. But it wasn't extravagant and it was quite small, just trying to keep up with feeding the 10 children, I suppose.
Right. Very practical. Yeah.
Yeah. But there was always a garden and the children did not take care of it. It was my parents that did it. And sometimes we were tasked with pickings and the tomatoes, or some leaf lettuce for the dinner. And, those always had to be prepared and washed. And I didn't like the activity. I don't know if any of my siblings did, but I didn't like that. That wasn't gardening. Besides, that was cooking, and I wasn't fond of it. And I wasn't fond of gardening. So
interesting.
I know. We played. We went outside to play. We weren't interested in working out there, which gardening can be. So.
We had a little vegetable garden, and I wasn't interested in cultivating it, but I did like picking the fruits of it. And I think there was something important, because up until that point, I only thought things came from a grocery store, So I think there's a beautiful connection when you realize, no, actually food comes, from other places, not in the grocery store. So I think it can be a beautiful learning tool for kids. And so I'm kind of surprised, but I think, again, it was probably a very practical time with 10 kids, and they had to get the gardening done. So,
right.
But flower gardens, right, came into it at some point. For you, later.
But they didn't. Yes. So anyway, when I grew up, got married, and established my own home, I began a vegetable garden. Right. That's what I knew. But it didn't turn out well. Through the years, we had a few baby melons and maybe a handful of tomatoes and a cornstalk or two. If people ask me now, do you grow food too? And I say, no. If I had to survive on what I could grow to eat, I would starve. So I gave it up. I was tired of, the critters eating my harvest, and it just wasn't worth it to me. So I discovered flowers, and and of course it overlapped, but they became my passion, and they still are. I will never get tired of flowers and other people's and my own, and but I still wasn't very good at it in the beginning, but I've learned since then. So I have a very lovely garden right now this year. Makes me happy.
There's been a lot of water and a lot of sun, and so it's making for some really nice gardens, I would say.
Yes.
What are some of your favorite flowers that you have? Just since we can't see it, share your garden with us. Like what is in your garden? How big is it? And tell us a little bit about it.
Well, we have small yards here, which is good because, it takes a lot of upkeep. As you probably know, I read your story about your poor smashed up garden by your driveway when you got the driveway done. You know, that's another similarity between you and me. We had a driveway put in a few years ago, and oh my goodness, I had to be out there every second so that they wouldn't trample on the things that were next to it. So
yeah, I should have had a fence or something, but I didn't think about it. The garden hadn't come up yet. It was right before that time. And I just assumed they would see, like, there's a little border there. There was a little border, but they just didn't see it, I guess, or I don't know.
Whatever.
Anyway, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, my garden. Well, currently, right now, let's see. Wow. In the spring, one of my favorites is buttercups. Beautiful, bright yellow flowers, and there's a whole section of them. You can sit by them and you feel like you're in a sea of yellow. And but those are all gone right now. So, but then coming up, and the way it's worked out, which is purely accidental, is that, when one thing dies off close by that area, another one comes up. So right now I have the orange daylilies that everybody knows, a whole strip of those. And I named these next flowers because they came up in the yard from the previous owner, and I couldn't find anyone to tell me what they were called. So I named them.
Oh, cute.
I named them swan heads, because they come up on a 2-foot stalk, and then the flower comes out. It's a blossom of blossoms. Each flower has tiny little blossoms in it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're white, and the blossom is shaped like a swan head. It's arched up and then it comes back up to the beak, and they just look like swan heads to me. So I have a whole section of those, and they're blooming right now, and they're white next to the orange daylilies. And then I have lilies, real lilies, not to be critical about the daylilies.
Yeah.
But anyway, and they're multiple colors, orange and white and deep pink and yellow, all in a circle. I planted them in a circle a few years ago around my bird bath. And so those are all blossoming. And then I still have some Shasta daisies. Oh, the butterfly bush is just beginning to have purple blossoms. And, oh, this is the funniest thing. These are what one of my friends calls volunteers, things that plant themselves.
Oh, just little surprises in the garden. Yeah.
Well, these are big surprises. I didn't know what they were. And I thought, oh, gosh, when they started coming up, I thought, this looks like something I should pull out. Well, but I found out that they are a medicinal plant. That the leaves are actually turned into natural medicines, and they're called mullein, mullein.
Okay.
They're huge. The leaves are huge, about 15 inches long. The stalks are huge. They're taller than I am. And at the top, and they grow these leaves out from, the stalk. And then at the top of the stalk, they get another little stalk, which is filled with tiny little yellow flowers up in the sky.
Wow.
I know. They're phenomenal. And they volunteered themselves right by my picture window from my family room so that we look out upon them. I mean, they're gorgeous. And I have a sliding window there. In the mornings, I do this. I open my sliding window to whatever is growing there. At this point, it's the mullein. And I just slide the window, and I say, "Good morning, beautiful."
Oh, that's sweet.
And there are several of these that just planted themselves along my curvy garden walk.
I love how you said they volunteered themselves. That's so cute. You're definitely personifying your garden. They're real to you. You're saying good morning to them, and of course we know that plants respond to our voices, and they like to hear from us.
Yes. So they are. Oh, it's just beautiful this year. God is good.
Yeah, I have the one remaining plant that made it, and it was in the corner, so a little bit further away from the demolition. And I didn't even know until this year what it was. It was a wild indigo, or a false blue indigo is another name for it, but it's just flourishing this year, and it's the only plant that made it. So I'm just so proud of it. I feel like it's just this tenacious plant that made it through the storm, and it just seems very symbolic, and I think that gardens can be very symbolic, and definitely symbolic of our faith life. So I want to go back a little bit because you went from vegetable garden to flower. What was it like? Think back about that transition. Like, what was it? Was there one flower that captivated you? Did someone inspire you, or what was it that led you to that transition?
Well, I don't think it was one flower, but whenever I would see flowers, whether it was in a neighbor's yard or driving along, they would just catch my eye. I loved all sorts of different flowers. The color, the shape, the texture. And I thought, so I would go try to find them and plant them. And, mine didn't thrive in the beginning because I would dig a hole, put the plant in, water it, and think that was it.
Isn't that it? No, I'm learning too, but I'm pretty new at it. But yeah.
Oh, anyway, so no, I can't think of a special one, but But I do know that, I don't know if you want me to move on a little bit.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the things, of course, that we're answering today is can we find God? Is God something, that we can hear and see in our gardens, and can we come closer to him that way? And so, yeah, I'm ready to move into that direction because I'm
Okay.
curious how that all happened. And I know you have your book where you kind of describe it. It's called
Yeah.
Connecting with God in the Garden. So yeah, why don't you share your story about how you made that connection? And I think there was an actual moment there that inspired you, right?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
very much so. Yes, I'd love to. So, well, anyway, while I was raising children, I was first led to my garden as a break from my indoor duties. And when I needed recharging, I stepped out my back door and began to plant and prune and weed and wonder. There's something about gardening and other activities I've noticed that frees your mind from thinking like we usually do during the day, and it wanders. And so it wanders and it wonders, So I would just be out there in the midst of it and just, I don't know, listening to whatever was out there. I joked about it being my therapy.
Well, it might not be a joke, right? I think it can be. Mm-hmm.
I think it's being listed as therapy now. And I spent years creating my gardens. But then when there was more time and the kids were gone, grown and gone, I could just relax in them instead of, doing therapy. And I would it was so peaceful and calm and delightful. And I found it hard to leave it, to go back in and do whatever I had to do inside. It was so different. The haven of my garden was so different from the rest of my life. It was a respite. It was a reward and a blessing. And the space felt sacred. Although at that time, I never thought about God being there. I had never been introduced to the idea of spirituality in nature. I went to church to worship and receive God's graces. And, I had no idea that he was right in my own backyard. So I would sit there and, like you said, with coffee and breathing the fresh air, gazing upon the beauty, marveling at everything, bugs, birds, critters. And I enjoyed the sun, the warm sun and the wispy breeze and even the chill of cooler weather. Everything out there I loved. It was so, if a good word is tangible, it was real, it felt like a tangible spirituality, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And when we go to church and to mass and, we're there and then we leave, and we are to bring that joy out into the world. A garden, on the other hand, is always there, even in the winter, it's dormant, but it's, accessible in a different way, I would say, right?
Absolutely. Yes, that's one of the main ideas that I tried to get across in my book. It's always there. It's so easy to access. You don't have to wait. You don't have to hop in the car. It's here. He's there waiting for you, So I'm glad you got that out of this.
Well, one of the things, and I hold your thought because I'm sorry I interrupted you there, but I was just thinking about the seasons, which is part of this, right? And there is the dead seasons, and we have a lot of that here. And I think that's one of the reasons I love about it, though, too. I mean, it makes spring and summer, and seeing all the little flowers come up, and and every year is a little bit different. And some years, some certain flowers thrive, and others don't as much. And we just really don't know exactly what is going to happen. But it's kind of magical in a weird way, if I could use that word.
I do.
Yeah, because it's there's a lot out of our control. But when we have a garden, we are also cultivating and tending to it and nurturing it. And I think I mean, women and men alike, have loved gardening, but there is
Yes,
something about this cultivating and this relational aspect of women, I think, that draws
yes,
our hearts to the garden, right? Because, I mean, we
yes.
are made to nurture and tend to and see things grow. And, but I think, even having all those seasons, that in itself is just so beautiful. And God planned that out. Like, we didn't have to have beautiful things. He could have made, I've said this before, he could have made a gray world. We could be in
Mhm.
grayscale, but instead he gave us all these little gifts everywhere. So I don't know, my mind's everywhere, but I think the seasons, and the rhythms of that, and I'm just, again, like, kind of planting the seeds and not knowing exactly what's going to come up or how, there's something
Yes.
mysterious about it. And I think,
Mhm.
you said sacred, and I think that's kind of connected, that the mystery, and the sacredness.
Yes, yes. Well, that was wonderful. I mean, I don't have anything to add to what you said. You said it all.
Well, just some thoughts out there, but yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of going along. So at some point you realized, oh, this is a gift. Like, it's not, like you said, not just therapy and something that maybe you kind of enjoyed, but now you're
Yes.
actually able to just like sit and observe and
Well,
receive what you kind of helped cultivate.
yes, and actually be a part of it, be enveloped, being, you could say observe, which I use that all the time. I mean, in relation to this, but it's like, well, I'll tell you something. I have different chairs around my garden where I sit with little tables, depending on what's in flower, in bloom, and depending on where the sun hits or doesn't hit, whether I want shade or something. So, but they're all moved very close to the plants.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
when I sit there, it's like I'm a part of that display of buttercups. I'm one with them. And the bumblebees that go from buttercup to buttercup don't bother me one bit. They know I'm not one, so they don't even come close to me. But, I'm right there and they're
Hmm.
right there. It's just, and butterflies, and that, well, they will come and land on me and circle around and land on my
Mm.
coffee cup. So it's just, it's not just observing, it's becoming one with it. It's being enveloped by this sacred air of, spirituality that is present there. Well, it's God's presence. We
Yes.
haven't really gotten to those words yet, but it really
Yeah.
is Him out there. And it's amazing how He, I think of if He were here and He hugged me.
Mm.
That's what's
Mhm.
going on in the garden, you know?
Mhm. Mhm. So just last night, with this bird cam, and I'm looking at nature and seeing these. It's so cool because I'm seeing, um, birds teaching their young ones right in my little camera how to
Yeah.
eat the food, and then the baby came back the next day and did it by himself. Like, this is
Oh,
all happening right before my eyes, and usually you can't
you're
observe that up
kidding.
close. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Oh,
and and
wow.
um and so I have this little bird cam in my backyard. My garden is in my front, but there's,
Uh-huh.
I see little critters sometimes, in front too, but it's most of it's happening in the backyard. But um so what I told my husband is, now I feel like when I go in the backyard, like, I have this whole new awareness of this world that I kind of didn't even notice before. Like, I
Yeah.
like all these little birds now, and I'm like observing their life. And so
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like, oh, I was just like a small part of their world,
yeah.
and now it's like a dimension, and a new dimension was added to my
Oh,
awareness of nature. And I think
yeah.
ultimately we're talking about gardening, but it's nature
Oh,
itself that is giving us this life. And a garden is just like this symbol of that nature that we can kind of hold and keep near us, right? But um
yes.
I think that's what you're describing though too, Cecile, is
Yeah.
just like a new dimension of
Yes.
awareness, right?
Yes, I would. I don't think I've ever used those words, but I'm going to write them down.
Well, it's just a new insight. Like I'm just kind of bowled over, and it's kind of humbling too, also to realize, wow, Roxanne, like you've kind of been missing all this. And life gets
Yes.
busy. Life gets busy. But my dad was a bird watcher and nature
Oh,
lover and
really?
observer. Yeah. And I think I didn't really get it, but I'm starting to understand now. So
Yes.
yeah, that's their world. That's their playground. And also the way God provides for them, like yeah, I have some
Yeah.
seeds out there, but like before my seeds showed up, they were still surviving without me.
Oh, yes. Yes.
That's even
Yes.
amazing.
I
Yeah.
mean, I know. Yeah. God provides. Well, it's the story of the sparrow, if he, if what, look at the sparrow. Is that what it was
Mhm.
in scripture?
Yes.
They neither spin nor sow, and yet, I'm
Yes.
paraphrasing at this point.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the first little critter I had in my bird cam was a sparrow. And
There you
and
go.
yeah, my dad used to sing the song Sparrow in the Treetop. I don't know if you know that song,
Oh,
but
I
it,
don't.
so there's something about the sparrow that is really special. Before we get off on too many tangents, I want to talk about your book because I really
Okay.
found it quite beautiful, and it's a journal book. So, I've read up to the point where the journaling starts and everything. So, because I do
Uh-huh.
want to actually use the book as a journal, but I was delightfully surprised at how beautiful it was and how it's laid out. You have it like some words are not, like there's different spacing to sort
Yes.
of direct. So tell me, yeah, tell me about the book and how that all started. What inspired you to put pen to paper about this growing love you had for your garden?
Well, okay. Well, you know what? Maybe I should go ahead and take a step back and if you want me to,
Yes,
but
yes,
tell this moment of revelation for me, because
yes.
so far I haven't even discovered God in the garden yet in our.
Right, right. Yes.
But
When did
I
he
should.
show up? When did he show up, Cecile?
Oh, well, okay. I'm looking for that. Okay. So it was more than a decade ago, and that's it answers one of your questions about when and how I started writing this. And it was just an incredible summer afternoon. I was sitting in my garden surrounded by my lovely flowers, and butterflies and bees were having fun too. And suddenly, I was moved by the grandeur of it all. I mean, I had sat there many times and mused and so forth. This was my habit. But this day was different, and something or someone stirred inside me. And my soul was lost in reverie. I was filled with amazement at the splendor of this moment. And my heart just overflowed with calm awe. And I'm not usually very calm, except in the garden. So, and my eyes were drawn to the clear blue sky. I mean, it was beautiful. Everything was beautiful on this day. The breeze, the sky, the flowers, the trees, the everything. And it brought such tranquility. And looking up, I took a deep breath up into this beautiful sky. I took a deep breath, and I actually felt God's peace in my soul. I'd been around for a long time, praying and so forth, different places, not in the garden, but I never felt such peace in my soul. And I was just filled with gratitude. So this moment was so sacred, I felt that there was more to it. So looking up into the sky, I wondered if God had a special message for me. So I asked him, "What are you trying to tell me?" And instantly I heard his voice. In the words of Jesus, he said, "I am with you always." And then in my heart, he continued, I am here with you every day, Cecile, beneath my endless sky. I have given you all these things so you can know me. Nature is the revelation of my very self. And if you look closely enough and listen in the breeze, I will whisper to you and you will hear my voice. Wow. Whew.
That's so beautiful. It really is. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was stunned.
Yeah. Well, I just think, Kate, like our world is pretty noisy right now, and always has been. It is a noisy world, but right now we just have there's a lot of signals going all over the place, and
Yeah.
in our area here, we had a tornado and it was deadly. There was
no.
3 people were killed just last weekend. And so we're kind of reeling from that. And then at the same time, there's political unrest and wars breaking out and things. And that's another thing. Now I'm coming back to my bird cam, but although it all started in the garden because that's where I saw the blue jay was peeking around the bend on a tree, and while I was in the garden, so that's how it all started. Like he enticed me, and I'm like, I want to see him, I want to capture. And so far he's been evasive, but he's shown up really quickly in the camera. But what I'm saying is, this is what I feel like. And I've been sharing some of the images on Facebook, so you can go find my little bird cam videos.
Okay.
Yeah, but I did say in one of my posts that this is distracting me in a good way. Taking, it's just that piece of getting out of the world and going into the present moment, which is where God dwells, right? And He dwells in our midst in nature. And we can find that peace, which you did, and so beautifully. It's one thing to, I've heard the saying that writers live twice, and it's one thing to experience it, but then you've been able to experience it again through pondering and thinking about it and writing about it. And in doing that, the experience deepens and becomes enriched. And then you turn around and share that with others and bring them that. And that's one of the joys, as I know, of the writing life. Of it's one thing to be captivated and inspired by something, but then we just can't keep it to ourselves, right?
Well, yes, but that's the rest of my story, if I'm not interrupting.
Yeah. No, go for it.
When that happened, I thought, oh my gosh, if you can imagine this, oh my gosh, I'm going to forget what he said.
I got to write it all down myself. Yeah,
exactly. So I hopped up when I was sure he was done. I hopped up and ran inside and got a notebook and a pencil, and I wrote down what he told me. And then it was the first time that I ever had a conversation with God. And I tried to understand that because, prayer is talking to God. Well, it's not talking to God, it's talking with Him. And I had never asked Him a question before. How can He give us answers if we don't ask? Yeah. But I said, what are you trying to tell me? And he answered. I thought, oh, so this is a conversation. It involves 2 people talking.
So tell me, how old were you? I'm trying to get a sense of how old you were. Your kids had grown or were out of the house at that point.
Yeah, they were adults and gone. And I was old. I'm still old. But it wasn't a young revelation. I'd spent all my life not knowing this, and it accidentally happened through this therapy of gardening that then became a beautiful garden. So anyway, I wrote it down, and it was just amazing. So I decided that I would return every day. What are you going to do? He's out there. He's talking. I'm not going to miss this, So I returned the next day and the next and the next. And I would go outside with my coffee, snack, pencil, and notebook, spiral notebook. And I said, I sat down, I got all set, and I said, okay, what do you have to tell me today? And then I would sit wherever I was, and I would just look around at the beauty in the garden, and whatever caught my eye, it didn't matter what it was, whether it was a flower, whether it was a bud, whether it was a tree, whether it was the breeze, whether it was a bee or a butterfly, whatever caught my attention, I would contemplate on that. And I'd think, well, what on earth could God be trying to tell me from this bee, or something, squirrel or whatever. And, if you ask the question, it's not that I figured out what he wanted to tell me, but I asked the question. And so he told me. He told me through my pencil. And I would write it down. And then, and the more I wrote, the more I thought and contemplated, it would come, it filled the whole page of that, that one reflection, that one contemplation filled one page. And then when I thought, okay, I've got a good message. Oh, I could use this today. Gosh, in my life, imagine that, So I would take this little message that he gave me, and I would think about that for the rest of the day. I call them seeds of grace now in my book, you might have noticed. But that was my seed of grace for the day. And I would keep that on my mind the whole day, no matter what was going on. And I would try to use that advice from God to govern my day. And then the next day, I did the same thing and the same thing and the same thing for 10 years. It was never meant to be shared. It was my own private prayer journal. We have those, And then one of my friends got wind of one of them or something. And they said, oh, well, Cecile, you need to publish these. I guess they were looking through my notebook or something. We all need this. We need this. You need to publish these. And I said, really? Because, when you look at other people from a distance, or from across the yard, you think they've got everything, right? You don't see all their wonderings or their inconsistencies or their questions or their doubts or their failures. You just see this person who looks like they're doing just fine. And so that's the way I thought all my friends were. I thought I was the only one that was not satisfied with my relationship with God. I didn't feel a closeness. I wanted some intimacy. There's so many books written about that, but I didn't feel it. And a lot of times people say, well, it's not a feeling. And I'm thinking, yeah, it is. So at that one eternal moment when he first spoke with me, I finally found that intimacy with him that I'd wanted. And so I just kept going out and meeting him every day. I mean, we became friends. So that's how it started. And then I went in this process, and you mentioned my book and how it was laid out and beautiful. And I thank you for that, because it was a journey, and it was almost, I could say that I made decisions, which I did, to put it in this format, but I had a lot of people helping me and giving me advice. And of course, I think God had a plan, and and I think probably, it turned out to be a book that I could never have envisioned. It was so much more than I thought it would be when I finally held it in my hand. So that was a good result.
It's very beautiful. Well, I want to take a break and come back after, and I'm going to ask you. So maybe you could think about this on the break. I'm wondering if the Word of God how that comes into it, because I know you feel like you were a late bloomer in terms of this intimacy with God, and yet you had all those years of connecting with God in other ways, and even if it wasn't as intimate as you felt like later, there
right?
was still seeds were planted along the way. So then
Oh,
that when
sure.
that moment came and the sun came and the rain,
Yes,
you were able to finally make that connection. So sometimes it
exactly.
takes a while to get there, like it did with you, but you got there, and that's the important thing.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so on the other end, I want to see if there's any scripture verses or anything that also connect you with the garden. So we will be back with "Can Gardening Bring God Closer" with Cecile Smith after this pause.
Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
Welcome back. We're with Cecile Smith this morning, and we are talking about, can gardening bring God closer? And of course, we know the answer. Some of these questions, we know the answer, but we want the answer to unfold in a natural way. And so Cecile has started talking about her book, and I was curious about the scripture and how she put her book together. But we had talked earlier also about seasons, and that was one of the things that obviously your book, Cecile, is ordered in the way, God orders our lives in seasons. And that's how you approached your book as well. How did you decide on that?
Well, it was quite a process. I had to figure out, of course, I was writing outside when, I wrote these, or looking through a window in the winter. And so they were seasonal already. I just had to figure out how I was going to compile them. And the 4 seasons were just so obvious. So the book has, it begins with spring and summer and autumn and winter. And, but, it wasn't just about my reflections or my contemplations or meditations. It had to be connected to the message that God gave me through that. And so I found scripture verses that would support each of the reflections I wrote. And then I had a prayer prompt, I guess we could call it, because on the opposite page are some journal lines for the reader's own thoughts and meditations, so they can, or messages they received. And then the final thing is the seed of grace, which is just a little blurb at the end of that section, that one reflection that suggested something they could take away from this reading and put it into immediate practice in their day.
I like that. So do you want to dive into your book and maybe pick out a few pages or whatever that you have there that you want to share with others to kind of give us an idea of how those things connect?
Okay.
In real time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with, since it's summer. Okay. So the second section is Journey into Summer. This reflection is called Summer Vacation. I glance out the back door. Buttercups flutter in the breeze. There's a delightful tinkling from the wind chimes. Tree branches totter and sway. Birds chirp here and there. I step out. My posture lifts with the breeze. My hair gives way. I stand, becoming a part of the breeze's dance. I think, this is like the ocean. I need not go there. Shrubs and tree branches alike, caught in the ebb and flow of my backyard. Ah, even the sea has not my beautiful buttercups, radiant roses, pleasing petunias, climbing clematis. I step forward. My bare feet caress the grass. No need for sand. The sun shimmers on the yellows, through the greens and beyond into the distance. No need for rippling water. My yard has its own tides. They beckon.
Very poetic, I would say.
Thank you.
And I really, really loved that because there's just times in your life where you can't travel or you don't have the financial means to travel.
Yeah.
One of the things about our area is we're close to Minnesota with its 10,000 lakes. And so a lot of people,
Yes.
a lot of people around here have lake homes. Well, we don't. But so it's interesting because in the summer, like everyone leaves and not everyone, but a lot of people go away and they have their wonderful, beautiful lake places. And I just love like seeing their sunset pictures over the lake. And my husband came from a lake town. He grew up in a lake town. His parents don't live on the lake, but his brother does. So we have access to that, but we live in the city,
Yes.
and, but like, I don't know, when my kids were growing up, we would go to the pool and that was our lake. And then we would come home and, have our own little, I guess what I'm saying is, you can make life and wherever you are. And there's a beauty in discovering that you don't have to go to faraway places to be a missionary, like you said, right? There's life right in front of you. And that's one of the beautiful things I think about your book. So I don't know if you have any more thoughts about that, but I just think it's very satisfying to realize that even if we don't have the whole world at our feet, we do have nature. Everyone does, right?
Yes. And exactly what you said. I live, in the Midwest, so there's no beaches here. And, I always wanted to go to the ocean in the summers, but we didn't often get a chance. And so, that was a revelation when I found all the similarities of the ocean right there in my backyard, and even some elements that were better than the ocean.
Yeah, I love that. Even the ocean doesn't have this flower or that flower, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, to appreciate what we do have, and to glory in to be enraptured by what God has given us in whatever place he finds us and we find ourselves. Like, there's just such a beautiful thought, I think. And you do kind of tap into that. So, yeah. Anything else that you want to share about that's in the book or even expound on that?
Well, I wanted to show the format, how it's set out here. That's my reflection, summer vacation. And with it, with each one, I pair a scripture or an inspirational quote. And the scripture for this one, for summer vacation, what I just read, is from Psalm 95. And it says, "His is the sea, for he has made it, and the dry land which his hands have formed." So I felt that kind of tied together my backyard with the sea. And he made them both.
Exactly. Yeah, there might be someone that lives near the sea that would love to see buttercups in a garden,
Exactly, yeah. And then the facing page has, I guess you could I call it reflect. It's just a prompt to help the reader reflect. And on this one, I said, "I always long for the ocean and wish for a chance to go each year. Yet, standing at my back door, I revel in the blessings God sends in a summer breeze and bare feet grass with rippling tides. Creation at its most wondrous, an ocean of possibilities." And of course, you kind of actually said that, but
well, no, but okay. So we live in Fargo. It's the flattest it can be, and obviously that's not very interesting to a lot of people. They're like, it's so boring, and at times I thought so too. And I dragged my husband out to Washington because I'm like, I can't. This is just boring and cold. However, I came to appreciate it so much. Like I there's nothing like a North Dakota sunset. And
Oh,
also and sometimes when the clouds are a certain way, because I've become a lover of clouds I mean, every day they're different and the formations are so beautiful. And then when they dance with the reflection of the sun and the sunsets, like
oh,
it's just, there's so much there too when you look up, right? And,
yes.
but sometimes they look like mountains in the distance, I mean, there's different things.
Yeah.
But yet,
Oh my gosh,
there
yes.
were no sunsets like I've seen in North Dakota out in Washington because you
Wow.
couldn't see them because there were mountains in the way and trees in the way. And I don't know, I just came to appreciate the landscape here. And then to also understand that this area used to be a glacier, and it was called Lake Agassiz. It was an ancient ocean and
Mhm.
or lake, I guess. And we're at the bottom. We were the flat part of the glacier. So like then it leads you into like questions and curiosities, and it's like, oh, when I know all of that, then that's really interesting. And and then being in a flat part of the country, there's actually something very interesting about it, and there's also beauty in it. So anyway, there's just so many things to explore here. And your book like kind of taps into some of those other thoughts that I've had. So, and I love
That's
how you,
wonderful.
bring little scriptures. Was that hard to like find scriptures to
Oh,
match
can you
every
see scripture?
reflection? Hmm.
Well, I knew a lot of scriptures,
Hmm.
having grown up Catholic, but and I had my favorites, and so I could always fit those together. But there were quite a few extra that I did not have a thought about what scripture I could use, and sometimes,
Hmm.
in Sunday Mass, because it took a while to put together, something would be read in Sunday Mass, and I'd go, "Oh, that's a good one."
Hmm. Then
And
you
then
get your notebook out in mass.
yeah, oh yes, absolutely. And or write it on the bulletin or something.
Hmm. Hmm.
um, but I did have to find something that made sense with the reflection. And I mean, it's nowadays you have the internet. I could say scriptures about the ocean, and things will pop up.
Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then, so I did that with some of them. Some of my friends, I had a lot of friends that were reading and giving feedback as I wrote it, and they would come up with some of them. So
Hmm.
it was a process, but it was so cool
Hmm. Hmm.
to put scriptures that we've heard many times, to pair them with something that was different than where they were usually read.
Exactly. So, what would be an example then of the takeaways of the seeds of grace? Is that what you call
Oh,
them?
yes, the seed of grace. Okay, now
Yeah.
on the facing page, there also is included those journal lines. And this, people say, well, do I have to write?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think, no, you don't have to write. You can draw pictures, you can ignore them, or you can write down the message that God sent you if you're listening carefully. But
Hmm.
whatever, that's there. And then at the bottom is the seed of grace. And it says, you needn't travel to faraway places nor venture distantly to experience God's beauty in nature and its surroundings, which provide enjoyment and serenity in your life. Thank the Lord for summer and tell him some of your favorite joys.
Mm. Love that. Love that. So, Cecile, given that, I want to jump off from that reflection
Okay.
there. What would you say to someone who says, I really don't have I don't have a garden. I don't, I don't even have my own yard. I can't
Mhm.
travel to places. Like, how do you take steps to cultivate this way of thinking and appreciating God's voice and even taking the time and space to hear it, which I think was part of your story, was just having finally that space and
Mhm.
cultivating that space. What would you offer to others who feel confined in that way?
Well, I'll start with a quote from Saint Teresa of Calcutta, who urges us to find God's presence We need to find God, she says, and he cannot be found in noise and restlessness. God is the friend of silence. See how nature, trees, flowers, and grass, grows in silence. See the stars, the moon, and the sun, how they move in silence. So to me, that speaks to the issue of the issue that silence is probably more important than having a garden. So if you're talking about, a space and where you can practice this kind of prayer, this is a kind of prayer. And let's see if I can find that. Okay. We travel or hope to travel to faraway places in search of Castilian roses in Guadalupe, healing waters at Lourdes, a higher divinity on a mountain in Nepal, in hopes of finding a closer connection with God and Mary. And here I am telling you to go to a garden and you don't have one. So what do? Nature can be found everywhere through simple connections where you can marvel at its reverence, witness the magnificence of God's attributes, pray with ease, refresh your body and soul, and hear God's voice. On a trail or path, a mountaintop or meadow, in the chatter of birds, the ebb and flow of waves, the roar of a waterfall, or the silence of a canyon. Now, those are still pretty far away, I admit. What about a pleasant stroll along a city walk or in a local park or arboretum, or even a car ride? From your own backyard, porch, balcony, or patio, or favorite window, looking out on a neighbor's flower bed or even a potted plant.
I just had a thought. Is that the end? I don't want to interrupt.
Okay. If you had any to add, yeah.
Well, I was just thinking about COVID and how confined we were then.
Yes.
Times like that, we still needed, but I think a lot of people did during that time take to the gardens and take to the things that were right in their homes and around them.
Yes.
I know we had all of our kids back. They were college age. And my daughters and I went on many walks around the neighborhood during that time because we could do that, Yeah. And there was a beauty in that. Eddie Halasom, I think, I'm not sure how to say that, but she talked about finding beauty in a concentration camp by looking up at the sky and noticing something. Yeah, it's so beautiful, and I wish I had it right here, but I'll put it in the conclusion, the outro. But anyway, so I don't know. My mind is just going to all these different places. I think I know I still, even though I'm an older mom now, I have friends that have younger kids, and a friend that has had a lot of health issues where she's been confined to her home. I mean, there's a lot of situations where people are confined, and yet I love how you tap into this idea that God is everywhere and God is in nature, and we only need just a small little glimmer to set us down the path of connecting with God in our garden or in our yard or wherever we find ourselves, right?
Or on a walk, or through our window. I never wrote this book as anything for people who were grieving or any kind of healing for that. It was just a garden book, garden meditations, a prayer book. But in many of the notes in the front, how people comment on what they got out of the book, things like that, what readers are saying, I guess. There were several of them that said things like, just what I needed to help me through my grief. There was another one that told me she was in the hospital. She was waiting to read my book. She got it. She was waiting until after her knee replacement, and this book was going to see her through that. Well, she wasn't walking out into the garden or even in the neighborhood. And, but these people found these observations helpful. Also, I've had people say, I felt I was sitting in the garden myself, and these were my observations.
I was just thinking that, Cecile, that even the memory of a garden, even a memory of nature, can be revived for someone who's so confined, right? You can be in a hospital bed and be reminded of these things. And as long as we have some sort of visual and remembrance of having been in a place like that, you can return to it and your soul can be enriched all over again through even that.
Yes, very, very well said. Thank you for clearing that up for me.
Yeah, no, I just know there's so much confinement, and even in the seasons, like winter can be so confining around these parts, and yet there's always something to observe, and there can be beauty in the hoarfrost. You know, we have such beautiful moments of beauty when everything is frosted, and I run out with my camera and try to capture it before the sun comes out and melts it all away. I mean, really, every season has its splendor. You know, and again, coming back to God, you know, I just can't imagine that this just all came to be without some divine input. And it just, to me, and as you've explained, God is, his voice comes through in these ways.
Well, yes. And here, St. Paul, so you're bringing up ideas for me that if I can find it. St. Paul says, everybody knows this one, and it never meant anything to me when I heard this scripture until I started this journey of mine. In Romans 1:20, St. Paul says, ever since the creation of the world, his, meaning God's, invisible attributes of eternal power and divinity have been able to be understood and perceived in what he has made.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's
creation. Yeah, and I've said this before, but creation begs a creator, you know, and
yes,
whoever created our world is outside of our world, and we have so much evidence of him. He's everywhere if we just peer into it and take the time to cultivate that space and kind of fine tune our eyes and ears. And well, Cecile, I know we could like continue on, but I do want to, you know, have a conclusion here. So, so what would you say to the question, can gardening bring God closer? How would you sum up the answer to that question?
Well, I might actually change it, because I truly believe and have discovered that God is in the garden, whether we go there or not. And he even told me that he left. See, when he ascended into heaven, nature is what he left behind so that we could know him. And so if he is out there, he's close already. The one that needs to get closer is us.
Yes.
We need to go out there. And then, of course, he's closer because we met him. I believe that he waits out there for each of us. He's waiting, and all we have to do is step out the door. I used to ask people in the beginning, I said, you know, if you got a news flash that said, Jesus is down at the public library right now, well, wouldn't we all hop in our car and get over there?
Yes.
Yes. And so I just want to say, Jesus is out in nature, whether you have a garden or it's just the sky that you can see through your windows, like the poor, oh gosh, girl you were telling us about in the camps. He's there and he's waiting for us just to notice him and to ask him, oh, I need to say. You have to ask the question. This is one of the most important things. You can find this nice, quiet, peaceful place that inspires you, where you can listen to him, but you must ask him the question. What is it you're trying to tell me, Lord?
And that's the question you asked.
Yeah,
and
God,
he answered.
what are you trying to tell me? Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think you've inspired us. I know you've inspired me. I hope there's someone out there that needed to hear this today. I'm sure there will be. It is the time of flourishing gardens right now. Whether you have one or not, go on a walk if you can. If you can't, call to mind the gardens of the past and look out the window. If you can't, I mean, maybe you're impaired that way and you can't even see, but hopefully you hear that message and feel the breeze and feel the sunshine, right?
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
Everyone can tap into this beautiful divine world that we live in, and that we just need to pay attention and notice. Just like I started paying attention to the birds, and now I realize, oh, I'm the neighbor. I'm the person invading their world. So anyway,
Maybe so.
yeah. Well, this is delightful. I just feel like I needed this break from the heavy topics of the day. And I hope it brings a lightness and a peace to those who listen. So thank you so much, Cecile.
Thank you, Roxanne. I really had such a wonderful time. Thank you for having me.
You bet. And God bless you.
God bless you too.
Can gardening bring God closer? When Cecile Smith said that God is in the garden, whether we go there or not, I couldn't help but think, first off, what a powerful thought. And secondly, well, of course, God has always been in the garden, starting with the Garden of Eden, which begins the story of humanity. There's a reason the Word of God places us in a garden from the very beginning. The garden symbolizes a place of lushness, bounty, and relationship. God is there and has always been there, but we might not be attentive to his voice and direction. In the original garden, Adam and Eve got sidetracked to their detriment, which sent all of humanity spinning into sin. It makes sense, therefore, that God would call us back into the garden of life and love. Another scriptural reference that keeps coming back to me is from Mark 4:26-27, in which Jesus said, "This is how it is with the kingdom of God. It is as if a man were to scatter seed on the land and would sleep and rise night and day, and the seed would sprout and grow. He knows not how." As Cecile and I discussed, it's all so mysterious and so filled with wonder, this reality of planting and allowing the earth to yield its bounty. In the same way, we plant seeds of love here and there and step back to let the earth and individual souls do what they will. With God's help, the harvest will be more than we could have asked for, but we must be patient and wait and hope. I did want to circle back to Eddie Hillesum, the World War II victim I'd briefly mentioned. Eddie, a Dutch Jewish author, penned confessional letters and diaries describing both her religious awakening and the persecutions of Jewish people in Amsterdam during the German occupation. In them, she retains a wonder in life and hope in her soul, despite her ultimate murder at Auschwitz concentration camp in 1943. This quote of hers connects to our conversation about how we can find God anywhere, even if just in the garden of our minds. She said, "Sometimes when I stand in some corner of the camp, my feet planted on your earth, my eyes raised toward your heaven, tears run down my face, tears of deep emotion and gratitude. At night, too, when I lie on my bed and rest in you, O God, tears of gratitude run down my face, and that is my prayer." Cecile wanted me to mention that she offers a weekly Seeds of Grace inspirations through email. I've included her email address in the show notes. Before ending today, I also wanted to give a quick shout out to Chris, Stephanie, and Kate at the Forum for continuing to keep my podcasts fine-tuned and in circulation. These conversations couldn't happen without the team's help. As you move into your week, don't forget to do what Cecile suggests as you're out in your garden, whether the interior or exterior one, asking the question, "What is it you're trying to tell me, Lord?" Then take time to listen for the answer. In our next episode, we'll ask, can a broken marriage be fixed? Until then, don't lose sight of the light.